Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com, here with a video that I hope isn't going to be too controversial, and if it is, I hope you listen to my points before you jump to judgment about what I'm trying to say here, and why I think that this needs to be addressed, and at least be talked about, the pros and cons, and how we can move forward as a community to address this. It's been getting a little bit of buzz on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, the usual suspects. What I'm talking about is the ability in Magic the Gathering you have to intentionally scoop or concede to a friend, and the ethics or moral gray area behind this particular allowance. And I understand that it's hard to enforce, and that's why they just allow people to intentionally scoop. If there isn't right now, though, it's what I call it gray. It's gray both legally and ethically, because in Magic the Gathering there is a clause for collusion. So let's say if there's any bribing or agreement based on monetary value or any other perk, then you can both be disqualified. So what I mean by that is, if, like, say I'm statistically very, very poorly positioned for a tournament of top 8, and my opponent has a great chance, and then we discuss that in our game, say that he's playing me, and I'm gonna lose, or I have a worse chance, but you have a great chance. Would you give me 15% of your winnings if you won, if I were to scoop you? That is 100% illegal in Magic the Gathering and is considered collusion. So it's kind of baffles my mind that intentionally scooping to a teammate or a friend, and let me really focus on the word teammate here, because I'll talk about that later and why I think that can be kind of in the same realm as collusion, because there is something that can be benefited to scooping to a teammate when you all represent a brand. Like a title is really good for a team's image and really good for potential sponsorships for a team, or even if, let's say, the team is sponsored by a vendor, in this case that I'll be talking about, they are really, really walking the fine line of even legal, where it begins collusion or whatnot, where it becomes just more than a friendly gesture, which a lot of people are trying to say this is. Now, let me be clear here. I'm a little bit jaded. This is involving Eric Froehlich, who, if you guys have watched my channel for a long time, know that I am not the biggest fan of Eric Froehlich. I just personally don't like a lot of what he stands for. And he's a phenomenal player, though, so don't get me wrong there. And I do believe he should have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like, he deserves it. He has the credentials for it. But I just don't like his character, so I might be a little bit jaded coming into this. But I think I've had this stance since the beginning of time, since I've been playing competitive Magic, that I do not like intentional scooping. I do not like it. I do not like trying to, like, say that you're statistically eliminated and your buddy isn't, and he somehow gets paired against you. You scoop to them so they have a chance. Or in the case of, like, Brad Nielsen got a lot of praise for scooping to his brother so he can make his first top 8. There's a thing called integrity, and there's a thing called the spirit of competition, and I think it violates those when you don't play to your best of your ability at any given time in a competition. I mean, why are we competing if... I mean, that is competition. That's why we compete. To may the best man win, may the best deck, may the best play win. And I think we need to address this, especially when these large teams... It's just going to be another advantage that these large teams have, that they statistically will start pairing up against each other, and these intentional draws and intentional scoops are going to make it even harder for the teamless, the individual, to compete against these big conglomerates like Star City Games or Channel Fireball. And in this case, it's Channel Fireball. The scenario was that Louis Scott Vargas scooped to Eric Froehlich to help his chances for Player of the Year. And yes, Eric Froehlich and LSV are good friends, and they play for the same team. And you might think this is a great gesture, but I'm hoping to go over some arguments of what this is bad. Now let's go back to the team, the whole definition of what the team is. And when sponsors involved, this is really getting gray. This is really, like, Player of the Year is a great title for anyone, but it's also a great title for a brand. Wouldn't you like to be the brand that had the Player of the Year? Hell, I love Rogue Deck Builder. I'd love someone on the Rogue Deck Builder crew to have Player of the Year. You know what a phenomenal thing that would do for the brand. And there, you can make the argument that there's a monetary value of having Player of the Year, and that what Louis Scott Vargas and Eric Froehlich did was beyond morally and ethically unacceptable, and even into that realm of where you would say it's collusion or bribery or whatnot, or where there was stakes beyond just a title. So I tried to research a little bit of this to try to make some comparisons to other sports and other competitions. Now, there does in some team oriented, I was talking to some family, and they say in NASCAR there's like in a team there's one car's whole purpose to kind of shut down the other team, to drive slow. And I've never watched NASCAR, I don't understand it and whatnot. But maybe if that is specifically in the rules or in the game, the spirit of the game, and that's acceptable. But I know in track you can't do that. In track and field you cannot have when there's like lane changes and whatnot, when in the longer distance runs, you can have a specific teammate sprint ahead and then specifically run slow and then let their teammate pass them without any interference, but then run slow. I mean, not even interfering with your opponents, but just running slow specifically, or pacing it so that your teammate has an advantage. You can't, if you're caught saying, hey, I'm going to sprint this one, just run your normal pace. I'm going to sprint this one to try to make everyone keep pace with me, and it's going to burn everyone out, and then you're going to be able to have the endurance to win. If you're caught doing that, your whole team will get disqualified. And that's how it works in sports, because we've already gone through this in sports. We've had teams try to scumbag their ways into championships and whatnot. So researching this, I guess the most recent ones that were intentional losing, like in my specific ones, it was, I know that the Ottawa Senators tried it back in the day, and I think the Edmonton Oilers also tried it, where their season was going really, really bad. And that particular year, there was a draft. The number one draft was huge. Like, I know that like we're talking about like the Sidney Crosby years, the Alex Ovechkin years, and you really want that draft pick where there's a cut and dry best player coming into the league. And so there's a lot of pressure for those teams to intentionally lose so they get that draft seed. What NHL had to do was they had to implement the lottery to stop teams from doing this. And I think that at first they did some fines, but even teams were like, hey, we'll take a fine if we can still get our draft pick because it's worth it. And so the other ones that have happened is recently there was a high school girls basketball where neither one of them wanted to play first round the regional champions, and so they didn't want to face them in the region or something. I can't remember what exactly was. It was bad to win the game, and so they were both intentionally trying to lose to intentionally get a better spot. Now we've kind of already seen that in Magic the Gathering. I think it was last Pro Tour where someone intentionally drew when there was no need for him to intentionally draw, to try to get a lower seed because they knew who they'd be paired up against and be a more favorable matchup. And you can call that a strategy, but I even think that really is treading the line on integrity of the game as well. And in the Olympics, there was it was in badminton was the other one that I came up with, where a lot of the Southeast Asian teams, they didn't want to face each other, and so they in the early brackets, because they were the big teams, and so what they were doing is they were all intentionally trying to lose to skew the brackets so they wouldn't face each other. Like, I don't know exactly how it worked, but they figured it out, the system, and there was like it got so, I guess, so stupid that they were intentionally playing, both teams were intentionally playing bad because they wanted the loss, not the win, because in this case the win would be the worst scenario. Now, it's just plain ridiculous when that happens. Like, again, if it's a team in the Olympics, if you're caught doing that, if you're caught losing to a teammate, your entire country will be disqualified. And I guess let me just pull this up. Like, it's in the Olympics, there's what's called an Olympic oath, and you have to take an oath to say that you will play at the best abilities. Let's see if I can find it here. says Olympic teams take an oath to compete to the best of their ability and abide by sportsmanship. So before they even enter in, they basically take an oath that they're not going to throw games. I mean, they're not going to. We all know that like Pete Rose and gambling and other sports have influenced like teams throwing games for monetary value. But I mean, there are situations where it is in your best intention for either your friend or yourself to lose a match, and Olympians have to take an oath saying they're not going to do that. When the badminton players were disqualified, the Olympics used a justification, or this is their ruling, that not using the best efforts to win a match and for conducting oneself in a manner that is clearly abusive or detrimental to the sport. And this is kind of where I'm arguing against this Lewis Scott Vargas and Ifro thing here, and it happens all the time. Again, this happens at every level of play in Magic the Gathering, and I'm hoping that some way we can address this in the rules. It'll be hard to... really hard to enforce, but I think we should enforce it when we can clearly, without a doubt, know that people are throwing games. And it's got to the point, even at my local game store, where we have two players. We have two guys, and they're really good friends, and they only care if one person wins. And so they will intentionally lose to each other all the time, and it's driving me insane, their little collaboration to try. They try to eke out as much prize as possible, like, ooh, so first place gets this, so if we both get third place, then that means that our potential prize is actually better if one of us gets first and one of us gets fourth, or whatever. And they'll do this in stupid game to try to eke out the best benefit for them, and then intentionally scoop to each other and whatnot. It's just ridiculous. They get an advantage even at our local game store, and I've seen it happen at the local level at the PTQ circuit, where friends will scoop to other friends that haven't made a pro tour or whatnot. In fact, it got so bad at PTQs you can't actually, if you were qualified for a pro tour, you couldn't enter a pro tour qualifier because people were doing that. They were playing the Dream Crusher and then scoop to my friend route, and it just got so stupid. And I think we need to finally address this in the larger tournaments. It kind of irked me when the Brad Nielsen thing happened, that everyone was defending him, saying this was such a great thing, showed brotherly love to scoop for his brother that's never been into a top 8. Earn it. Earn it. If you want to get into a top 8, earn it. If you want to be a player of the year, earn it. It's just driving me insane that it's going to get worse and worse as Channel Fireball team becomes bigger, or these conglomerates become bigger, these teams, these friends become bigger. Who knows if they've made agreements before this tournament even started? And if they shut their mouth through the tournaments, there's no way to actually even find out if they've collaborated or colluded to, figure out if there is any monetary value into scooping to an opponent, if one of them's doing better than the other, or I mean, what was really online for Player of the Year? Was there any? I'll have to look at the prize, if there's any sort of prize or monetary value for Player of the Year or incentive, that you could even argue that since they both work for the same company, that is collusion. And I had like a list of, let me see if I can hurry and find some of the things that I've written down here. So yeah, that's basically, in sports, it just does hurt the integrity of the game to do so. And most of them, now that I'm looking over these, like the drafts in both the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, have all adjusted their rules just specifically for the draft or for trying to pair up against a specific team in the playoffs. But it's beyond that. I guess with Magic the Gathering, it's just that issue we have to address of what constitutes as a team or a friend or a buddy, and is that ethically and morally right to scoop? One of the Twitters was Li Tan, who's a really good player, and I don't think that he comes from a huge team. And then he was in the running for Player of the Year, and then he saw LSV concede to Eric Froehlich before his match even started, and it was just kind of soul crushing because he knew that then if he lost this match, then he was out of the running for Player of the Year, and it just sucks when someone else has that advantage. Lee had to play someone. He didn't have a buddy he could just scoop to, and yes, the stars did align perfectly that LSV could scoop to his buddy Fro, and that was just bad luck. maybe we as a or Wizards as a company has to figure out a way how that can't happen. And again, it's going to be hard to really enforce, but I just really want to know your guys' thoughts. Now I'm all over the place and lost my train of thought. But that's where I stand. I never scoop. I think that you should play out even if I'm statistically eliminated. I got in some trouble with some people, some bigger names in the community one time because I was statistically eliminated from a tournament, and I decided to play it out against a person that happened unluckily to be paired down, and he was hoping that I would just scoop to him to allow him to get into top 8, and I played it out and beat him, and neither one of us made top 8. And it's to the point that I hope that ethically right now I'm promising right here and now that I will play it out versus my friend if I ever am in a tournament in a scenario where I'm statistically eliminated, my friend isn't, and yeah, it's just, you can't collaborate. To keep the integrity of competition, keep the integrity of the game, that's just not the right thing, and that goes beyond friendship. That's the game, the integrity. That's why we compete, and I want to know your thoughts on that. All right, so I found a little article that goes along with this. I'll try to splice this in the video. This is a guy. This is after the badminton players were eliminated from the Olympics, and this is someone's little blog about the point of the game is what it was called. And he talks about what integrity is, and integrity equals skill plus effort plus judgment. And with this in mind, here are the ethical failures involved in intentionally losing. The player must rein in or distort their skill. An athlete must hit the ball out when it could easily go in. They're talking about badminton here. Or hit a bad serve when they could easily get the serve in. They make deliberate mistakes of omission and commission. The athlete lets down their effort and gives less than what is required. A true athlete exists totally present of the situation and commits his or her mind, perception, and body to what is called for. Holding back effort might be as simple as a player does not extend far enough to return a serve or react as quickly as they would to return a slam. So, I mean, this is the whole point that people could say, oh, well, if you force someone to play out, imagine if you would have forced Louis Scott Vargas to play against Eric Froehlich, then how are we knowing if he could potentially just make a misplay or whatnot, or do a game violation to get disqualified? And again, that's where I think as a judge, we'll just take some research to say, is this collusion? You add up the fact, you just got to be a good detective and then make your ruling on that. Either way, the player pulls back from what they're capable of and required in effort. A player must subvert their judgment to make bad decisions. This is actually harder than it seems because it assumes the player knows what to do, and all their training, pattern recognition, and prime behavior push them in that direction. The player must instead make a bad decision knowing what a good one is. And so that's what they're talking about, that, that's if you intentionally play bad, that's how it's ruined the integrity. The moral wrongs of intentionally losing and throwing a game add up quickly. A player betrays him or herself and violates their relation to the identity as an athlete. The athlete chooses to not play up to their highest skill during a competition. The athlete chooses to sacrifice his or her exquisite judgment and decide badly, knowing it is a bad decision. This is not a mistake. This is moral sabotage. Not only do they betray their skill, but sacrifice the effort they have in him or herself to achieve elite status. Even if skilled and judging well, they mar their actions with less effort, bringing down their level of expected excellence. You could make this even analogies to intentionally scooping without even playing, that this is a match loss for Louis Scott Vargas. This is something that this almost hurts his image. He's lost a game in a pro tour, and I guess he doesn't care because he's been to plenty of pro tours. But this. Then going on to Eric Froehlich, this is padding his record. This is giving him some advantage that another person doesn't have. He is not, in this case, let's say he was not 8-1 going this game. He doesn't have a 9-1 record. He has an 8-1 in an intentional scoop. It's not the same as a 9-1 record. He didn't win a game. And I hope everyone can see that and see that that's not the same as winning. The athlete violates their promise to their teammates to give all their energy and focus to achieve a common goal. Intentionally losing also violates an athlete's relation to the integrity of the game to which they have devoted their lives. The athlete degrades the very practice through which they gain that gives them identity and worth. Intentionally losing disregards faith with the spectators and fans who invest money, time, and emotional loyalty in following the team. See, that's a huge one. There was a potential feature match that was intentionally scooped. We could have seen Eric Froehlich versus Louis Scott Vargas play. We don't get to see it play because someone wants to pad a friend's record. The person's commit to the team and follow its members and stake emotional and intellectual energy on them. The disgusted booing and anger of the Olympic fans who came expecting excellence in competition got a farce reflection of this. So they're talking about the throne game in the badminton, and it's kind of the same thing. We came to see 9-1 decks make it or whatever, not an 8-1 and an intentional loss by a player. There are huge problems with this. Huge problems to intentional losing. And furthermore, this article goes on to say, I cannot believe the athletes who did this believed in their actions. The entire body and being must have screamed out against this betrayal of their Olympic ideals and their years of training. Yet in the end, they did not. They did and deserved their fate, though being disqualified. Let's flip it on the backside here. How would Louis Scott Vargas and Ifro feel if Ifro had to play a game and ended up losing that game, and someone else scooped to someone so he could get a player of the year, and they got statistically eliminated because of that? It's almost like the golden rule. Do unto others as you would like done unto you. Would you want your whole hopes and dreams you were going to get in the top 8 unless someone intentionally scoops to someone? It's just, this has gone too far. The collaboration, the conglomeracy, the teammates, the sponsorships are going to ruin this game if this continues. And it is already ruined the integrity of the Pro Tour. Someone just got a free win. That should not happen in competitive play. So I want to know your thoughts on this. I want to know if I'm missing something, if I just don't understand friendship, or what arguments you're going to make here. But I think that this is worth a discussion and worth something happening towards this. I'd like to hear both sides of the argument. So in the comment section below, let me know how you feel about this. Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.